Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at the Sports Summit in our panel, AI in Sports, from data to dynamic fan experiences. My name is Sepi Motamedi. I head up our sports and live media marketing at NVIDIA. And I'm joined by an amazing set of panelists who I'm going to get to introduce themselves, starting with you, Jono.
Hi, folks. My name is Janel. I'm the Chief Product Officer with SumerSports.
Guys, Jason Dvorkin. I lead our industry specialist business development team at AWS, going across media and entertainment, games, and sports.
Hi, everybody. My name is Janel. I lead business development and sales at CAMB.AI. We are a foundational AI company focused on speech and translation, highly verticalized in the world of sports, media, and entertainment.
Wonderful. So as the title suggests, we're going to be focusing on AI within this space, and we're going to really look at it through multiple lenses, including data, how that data gets leveraged by companies for things like fan experience, for things like localization and player performance. And I think to open it up, I have a question for each one of you, which is, where are you seeing AI create real value in sports right now? Is it on the fan side? Is it on operations? Is it somewhere else? Dano, maybe we start with you again.
Okay, I'm going to cheat and say all of the above. I think where we're seeing it have the most impact reliably, it's accelerating outcomes, right? So on the athletic side, the team side, when we're talking about scouts, coaches, GMs, by the way, sorry, SumerSports does football analytics and data and AI. We're seeing time to outcome and understanding so you can make decisions. This week is the draft. Right, I can do a lot more research a lot faster. That's meaningful value, and that's the kind of thing that we're seeing AI help with. On the fan engagement side, I mean, if you take a look around here, how do I engage that fan? How do I do it now? How do I do it deeper than before? Not just describe what just happened, but that nugget that's going to draw them in and keep them there. So it truly is, I think, across the board, and just different organizations have a different desire or ability to adopt it in different places.
I completely agree with you. I think AI is helping these organizations tell stories better. And I think it's helping these organizations to streamline and enhance operations. Exactly to what you're talking about, Jono, with what's going on in a couple of days with the NFL draft. The NFL launched an NFL IQ product, which was basically to take all of the data that came from the combine, to take all of the data that they have on the players, on the teams, and make a fan engagement piece where all the people who like to sit around and make their mock drafts and sit there with their friends and figure out who's going to go where. Now you have an AI framework where instead of going through publication after publication to get that data, you can make ass of it and have that data returned to you. You could build your draft board and you could see how right you were compared to the general managers and the people who are making the decisions on draft day. I think from that operational efficiency side, you're 100% right as well. It is about how do we tell that story? How do we make that story relevant? And how do our fans care? And I think being able to leverage AI to go across multiple video libraries, multiple sources of data, all create synergies and streamline that process to make it easier and faster for these teams who might not have a million people working for them, but they have a million fans who want to see what's going on and want to be contextually aware of what's going on. And all that comes together with the help of AI.
Yeah, and I think to echo that, just to let you guys know how we think about it at CAM, when we work with companies, we'll usually do a use case map. So you can think about all of the areas across the organization where you could apply AI. If you do all that and then draw a line, one side is going to represent efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and cost savings. The other side is going to represent growth, new markets. Is it putting out new feeds and languages? So then that's going to come to the sort of fan experience side that represents monetization and growth.
Janelle, maybe just to kind of build on top of that, sports entities, they want to go a lot more direct to consumer. We're seeing that as a trend. What are some of the most effective ways you're seeing AI used to grow and that localize that fan base?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. It's definitely a trend that we're seeing. A lot of these sports leagues and organizations, they want to own that experience with the fan, right? So they're creating their own D2C platforms, but then they're left with this problem, which is how do you get that content out to all of your global fan base? And this is where traditional workflows would really break down, right? If you're trying to put 15 to 20 commentators out there. So we work with those leagues. We obviously have live solutions to create additional audio channels, but where our customers have been most successful, it's not just about putting out one match or even a season of matches in a different language. It's really owning that entire fan journey. So you want to make sure that you're also localizing your social media content. Is your website available in the languages of your fans? So I think it's thinking about a 360-degree solution that will, really give a good fan experience.
Can I piggyback?
Please, yes.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think what we've seen at AWS recently is we've become the trusted partner for storytelling across news, across sports, and how AI is influencing how that all happens. And being able to take that content and understand what athlete is relevant within a specific geography. It's one thing whether they're at the top of the scoreboard or at the bottom of the scoreboard, or how that team is performing on that day. But if you can't localize it and deliver it to a global fan base and cultivate that fan base, and if you can't meet the audience where they are and do it in their language and bring the relevance as to why that fan should care about that specific moment, it becomes a huge missed opportunity for these teams. And AI is making that process so much easier and so much faster, giving them the ability to really do this at scale.
Wonderful. And Jono, your company with SumerSports, you guys are working with a lot of data. And so how is data being leveraged in order to grow fan bases at scale?
Yeah, I think actually it's in the title for the session too, dynamic but personalized. So understanding, if you think about data, sometimes it's descriptive, this happened. Other times, and this is the depth that we go to because we serve teams, it's what should have happened, could have happened, but didn't. Because now you can assess skill. I did something, the player did something, and that led to a better outcome, more yards gained, right? A completion, a touchdown, or you didn't get the block. That can also be used to drive a better fan experience, right? Maybe there's a level 100 fan just watching the game because it's on at home, it's on in the sports bar. Then there is the person that wants to be the smartest fan in the room, right? It's like, oh, did you catch that? Did you know? And so that data, while used on the team side of things to judge skill, draft, trades, free agency, can create a really great fan experience as well. You can help cultivate that next generation of player. You can help make people the smartest person in the room. And then that will also lead to brand loyalty, right? Because I get that experience through this mobile app in this market from this vendor or this network. So I feel there's a lot that can be done with data there to further that fan experience.
Awesome. Now, Jason, and anyone, feel free to jump into with this question, or really any of our questions. If a league or a club, if they want to get serious about AI, what does that underlying data and cloud architecture need to look like?
I think getting started with it is fairly simple. What do you want to achieve? What is the outcome that you want to do? And as an organization, how willing to take an experiment are you? One of the things that we've seen with AI is because it's changing so fast, as an organization, you have to embrace being uncomfortable and you have to be willing to go out there and take that, run that experiment and fail. And that's fine. Go spin up something different and try it again. I think we are at this inflection point where you're starting to see elasticity with these and being able to try something and see what resonates with the fan base and then pivot if it doesn't, and being able to do that quickly. I think more and more organizations are seeing the use of AI and having that data foundation that tells you what's going on. To Jono's point about that data, the PGA Tour drives everything that they do from a fan engagement standpoint off of their scoring platform, ShotLink. They know every single thing that's happening on a golf course and can track the tiniest golf ball with lasers and radar and know what is happening to that ball. And because they have that data, they know the flight, they know the angle, they know the trajectory. That starts to factor into the storytelling, and that starts to bring automation and optimization to workflows. But again, it starts to bring that insight in different ways. And again, if they go out there with something that doesn't work, that's cool. Let's pivot. We tried and move forward. And I think the more organizations that can embrace that experimental culture and realize if they think that the experiment was going to work as soon as they started, it's not an experiment. That's just kind of trying to prove yourself right? But being able to go out there quick and not be afraid to fail is huge on getting started.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Absolutely.
You used a word about the architecture and the infrastructure. So The reality is you're not going to be able to, sorry, I am talking to you all now, right? You're not going to be able to start from scratch and build this beautiful, pure AI infrastructure to get everything done. You have existing data platforms, you have existing security compliance policies. And so, like you said, Jason, right, the ability to find a thing you're trying to solve and be free with that, right? See if that works and then iterate. We've had some conversations because we're in football with clubs and NCAA schools where they're on one end of the spectrum. We are going to adopt a single AI policy, and this is the engine, and it's going to do everything, all the way down to I just bought everyone Copilot licenses, and they're trying to jam stuff in, right? Like that open-ended type of an approach is going to lead to either failure or confusion. You want to be focused and experiment, right? Try those, be open to that, because AI is a different beast than we've seen before. But everyone in this room, the organizations you're from, have also gone through these kinds of transformations before. It's just a new technology with higher octane gas. So apply some of that same learnings you had before. Just don't go too extreme in other direction and know where you're going, I think, is the name of the game.
Speaking on behalf of NVIDIA, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that from an infrastructure standpoint, a lot of it needs to be GPU accelerated. AI requires tremendous amount of powering, networking if you're incorporating AI into the live stream. So from that perspective, that should also be part of the consideration for putting together your AI roadmap. Jason, you spoke about experimentation, which I think is really fascinating because a lot of AI is within that pilot phase, is within that experimentation. And often a lot of those pilots sort of die within that experimentation phase. And this really is a question for everybody. What do you think separates the AI projects that are successful and move on into production versus the one that's stall out?
I think we're seeing an inflection point in the industry where the tools are catching up to the creativity that all these people who work at these teams and leagues have. And I think as a result of that, when you look at early stage AI projects, it was an or decision. Do I do this or do I do that? And I think what we've seen over the past couple of months with the velocity that AI is evolving and the velocity at which models are improving, it's become more of an and decision. And you're finding that organizations now have an opportunity to really step back and think big about what is that outcome? What is that nugget that we are trying to get? What is this thing that is going to most delight the fans? What is this thing that can give our players the most competitive advantage? And they're starting with an outcome and then thinking about, well, what if we did this? And that is helping to get these projects off of the ground floor and into actual production and being used. I mean, I mentioned the NFL with Draft IQ. You look at what the NBA has done with how they've influenced some of their enhanced statistics to really tell a different story. So the outcome and the story that they're looking to drive, the NBA used a stat called gravity, which would basically look at what happened once one player on the court had the ball. How did that impact the other 9 players on the court? And how did that create a scoring opportunity? It's great from a scouting standpoint. It's great from a player performance standpoint. But how does that impact the fans? Why is that relevant? Why could that have been the turning point of the game? What could have happened differently? And I think having that clear outcome and then pushing yourself to the next level to think bigger about what else and really embrace that and decision in the process is helping to get these into production.
Yeah. From our perspective, the pilots that have actually made it into production still had a lot of human in the loop work doing that. So there's a fair amount of fine tuning necessary to bring a fan experience the level that a league is going to be happy with. So if you think about an out of the box model, language model, it may get the translation accuracy right, but are you sure that you're putting in all those cultural nuances? Are you getting player name pronunciations right? Those are all things that you need to think about holistically and do need to be done sort of in the beginning, or there'll be a lot of iteration happening across the pilot. So sort of, buckling up for the long haul, really, of a pilot and, knowing that, I mean, it's an outplayed saying, but AI is the worst it's going to be today. So this stuff is evolving and getting so much better so quickly that to say something doesn't work immediately is a little bit short-sighted.
I just had a conversation on this like an hour and a half ago. When we say pilot, that's usually in the realm of tech and product and IT, the team that's building that, don't forget to take it to production. You got to get the budget. And so the outcome, right, knowing what it is that you're trying to achieve and how that improves and move the business forward, knowing that up front makes that latter part of the conversation so much easier. Remember TCO, ROI, everyone's favorite acronyms. Those are all about how does this move the business forward. And so it ties in from the technology side to make sure you have the right solution to the buy-in, all the way to if we have to have humans in the loop, right? The turnaround time, that cost. So it serves multiple purposes, but I've seen many projects get to the, wait, that's how many zeros worth of cost? Like it can tank it. But if you know that outcome is worth that much, then that's an investment worth making. So just food for thought on that.
And I guess what that leads to is sometimes we think in order to get to a particular outcome, AI is the way to do it. But other times it's just pure automation. That's what you need. And so how do you decide which path to go down?
I think that goes back to the outcome that you're trying to drive. I mean, we've seen this before, right? Programmers and engineers have figured out scripting methods and ways to create that automation to do a task. What you're looking at with AI is really how is it going to take a process that people are doing today and give those people the opportunity to think about higher level things or be able to think about the next big thing or drive an idea forward faster. I think where AI is starting to come in that space is in combining multiple data sources, having that clean data foundation that gives you the ability to ask questions of it, gives you the ability to drive actions off of it. That's more than just taking an automated process and going from A to Z. It's giving you a little more input and a little more thought and giving the option for directionality that could help influence an outcome.
Awesome. Oftentimes, as part of building AI, there's this like last mile work that needs to happen to determine its success. Jono, maybe we can start with you. What is that work and what is it that organizations tend to underestimate?
I'll start by acknowledging the last part. Everyone underestimates the last mile. It sounds easy because it's the last mile, right? But that last mile can be uphill. I think if you look at any of the vendors around here, anyone on stage, our goal is to build something that solves the majority of problems. But the problem with that statement is there's distance, that last mile to make it work for each team, each persona, each geography, right? The same, we're in sports. So the same game displayed to different people in different markets does require a different messaging, a different delivery. And so that is a cost, right? And I think what we try to do is you take it as far as you can. And then we have partners that do that customization, that extension, because they also know best for that team, that market, that persona. So there's that weird gray area. And the goal should be, I always hold my teams accountable. We should make that last mile as small as possible over time. Right? Because the more that we can do to get it there, the better we're going to solve those things out of the box. That's an imperfect statement and answer, but it's true, right? Every individual user is going to have a different opinion. Every fan is going to have a different opinion. So it's now preferences and how do you enable those?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of collaboration on our side. So when we work with a sports league or organization, we really need them to inform us how we can do that fine tuning. I'll give an example. We work with the World Surf League. You can imagine how surfing terminology across geographical places and languages changes quite a bit. We sort of need them to feed in that glossary, right? So that we can do the fine tuning and produce something that their fans are going to feel that comes out natural. So it's really about that iteration and fine tuning together.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Fox just announced us as their preferred AI cloud partner, and they spent 18 months using a new service that we released called AWS Elemental Inference. And what it does is it takes video that's shot in 16:9 and makes it vertical. It doesn't sound like that should be that hard, but in sports, it absolutely is, right? Because you're looking at how AI is following the action that's happening on the screen. You need to crop that image in a certain way so you're not losing context or storytelling. You might have run an experiment and said, we could just run our dirty feed through this and our program feed. And then you realize, shoot, my score bug at the bottom is rectangular. And now I can't tell what all those letters and numbers, and I can't read the clock. All things that happen, right? So as you continue to iterate and continue to test, you go, you know what? Maybe the clean feed would be a better idea, and we could add those graphics later on, right? So you start evaluating the workflows and you start thinking about things. So that last mile closes, but that last mile also moves in different ways because, like I said, it is an experiment, and you have to be willing to put in that time to innovate and make sure it's meeting the objectives that you had. But you're working with that North Star, and you know what that outcome that you want to achieve is, and you're working backwards and going through all those steps to get there. It makes it a fun journey.
Jono, leagues rightfully see themselves as custodians of historic data, of IP. What guardrails and governance do you think they need when they open that data up to AI?
Okay, I want to say something. My background, by the way, I do data platforms and security, so I've done this for a long time. I think sometimes people conflate data security with this box, right? You can put everything in a super contained, but that once it's in the hands of the end user, things can still go everywhere. So it is a top to bottom kind of problem to think about. It has to start with where your data is, right? So when you have proprietary data in football, those playbooks, those are sacrosanct, they're gold. So of course you want to control those, but you have to think about how is that data going to be used? We talked about building AI to quickly answer questions. Well, that answer that the scout may send to the GM or the GM will send to the president may contain tidbits of that super secret sauce. And so it's thinking about that whole and that last mile problem again. So you know, what are all the ways and places, the who are going to be using those, and then building your policy around that. Because different clubs, different teams will think about data security somewhat different. It's thinking the whole problem and not just assuming that because it's stored in this one place, I'm golden, right? The harder part is at the edge of all this. We used to do things like DLP and email, right? Data loss prevention. We look for credit cards, 16 digits. It's the same pattern of how will it be used, who will use it, and then putting the right guardrails around that.
Jason?
I think what's interesting about the data and the security, you're 100% right. These leagues are custodians of history. And they take it very, very seriously. The team's the same way. It's the history of what happened. And when you think about that data, we throw the term data around quite often because it is literally the foundation for all of this. But that data at some degree is these organizations' intellectual property, right? And there's value to that. And there's the use of that can drive revenue for some of these organizations as well. And I think as part of that, the protections that are in place to make sure that the data is used responsibly, the data is used to enhance the storytelling, the data is used to drive decision-making and outcomes, again, is very key. And I think what these organizations think about, and rightfully so as those custodians, is how do we make sure that we are putting the processes in place to safeguard our data, to make sure that when questions are asked of it, it's going to perform the way we want it to perform. Because again, the last thing you want to do is, as you mentioned, you have that little tidbit of secret sauce in there. You might not want that to get exposed in a simple question. So how do you put those guardrails in place to make sure that the intended outcomes that you're trying to drive to are being accomplished without, again, risking that IP that you have over decades of time?
Can I make one ask of everyone in the audience? I've seen this before in healthcare. We all believe in patient health. Patient health information has to stay safe, right? But there's value in sharing patterns across healthcare organizations. There's value in sharing patterns about fans, about players at an abstract and secure level. When you look at those larger sets, you can see things that will lift everything forward. it's a hard line to draw, so you're not sharing sensitive and confidential information. But think of literally the hundreds of millions of humans and fans and players that we collectively are all engaging with. We can create a better level of game and fan experience if we share the right pieces of that. So that's the other side of the question that we're talking about. But if we don't think in that way, we are leaving money, fans, and eyeballs on the table for this. So just putting that out there as well. Make sure you secure your stuff. But there is a better, greater good that if we do right and share right, you can do some really cool things.
Janelle, can you walk through one concrete customer example where AI moved from an internal efficiency, for instance, into or production tool into chatbot or something that was fan facing?
That's a good question. One customer example that comes to mind is our work with Tennis Australia. So they initially were only looking for a really quick turnaround solution for original language transcription for their press conferences, right? They do many press conferences across the Australian Open. From that work, that grew into, hey, maybe we can now put these out to our media outlets in different languages as well. So we started translating them. There's a lot of stakeholders internally at an organization that need to get that buy-in. So if you're starting small and sort of building that trust, you're going to be much more likely to keep proceeding and getting something into production. So that led then to us translating Djokovic's press conference into Mandarin and Spanish, which then led to us live streaming the final into multiple languages. So I think that's a great example, and it really is key. Like there are so many stakeholders involved in these organizations, and just getting everyone on board little by little usually is where we see the most success.
Any examples across either Sumer or the customers you have in AWS?
Sure. So one of the challenges with the PGA Tour, they have 120 to 150 golfers in the field over a given tournament. They like to write round recaps to provide information about how that golfer did, whether that golfer is at the top of the leaderboard or at the bottom of the leaderboard. So in order to do that in a timely fashion, agentic AI, throw another buzzword out there on top of this, agentic AI came into play. So in this scenario, they had an agent that would wait for the data from the ShotLink scoring system to say the round was complete. That agent would go through that data and start to analyze what happened in that player's round. That data would start to take that, or that agent would start to take that data and craft the narrative. Meanwhile, another agent is going into their asset management platform looking for video content from that day or looking for photography from that day, bringing it together as a finished article with video and image content, and then enabled them to publish that immediately to their website. So they could basically write 1,200 articles for about 25 cents a piece. Now, where can that go? Exactly as was described. How do we translate that? How do we start putting that in different languages so that if it is Victor Hovland, it can be in his native language, and maybe he's not at the top of the leaderboard, so they're not seeing him on television, but it starts to connect the fans to the athletes and starts to put context around why what happened on that day mattered.
Let's wrap this panel by looking into the future now. 2 to 3 years from now, what is going to feel very normal for sports fans as they're consuming sports that is totally within the realm of experimentation and is like rare today? And Jono, maybe we can start with you.
I think we're already going this direction, but we're talking 2 to 3 years. So we'll just say it's extremely this. It's getting that game experience, that live event experience anywhere, anytime, the way that I want it, right? So I don't have to actually watch the game. I still know what's going on. I get that fun fact, that thing that hooks me in. I could be the smartest person over there in the Lumen booth right now, even though I'm not watching the game. Those kinds of things are what build that experience and make me want to keep coming back and watch that sport. You talk about the internal, external, player information, right? Give me that thing that this is why I watch this game. I learned so much about this. I can talk about it later. Those, I think, will really change how people experience sport.
I think as the data foundations of these organizations continue to grow and evolve, I think it's going to know who my favorite player is because I've given it that data. I think the way we consume sports, it hasn't changed in decades, right? You still cover football left to right on the television. Most of our kids who are playing Madden go north and south when they watch football. I think that's going to start to add perspective. I think AI is going to help do things with cameras to give you a different lens on what's happening on the playing surface, different than what you expect. I think it's not going to be so driven by announcers telling me what I should care about. It's going to be driven more by what should be cool and why I should care about it, as opposed to following the same story week over week, year over year. I think it's going to get a lot more intuitive and, again, meet the audience where they are.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say access, but access is really about personalization. So, I mean, you should be able to watch any niche sport in any language that you want. But I think in 2 to 3 years will be served to you in your native language.
What a wonderful positive note to end on. Perfect. That brings us to the end of our panel. Huge thanks to my panelists. Fascinating conversation. Thank you for sharing your insights. And a big thanks to all of you. Enjoy the rest of NAB.